did you consult? But there's a mistake we are making.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
We went to this school, we ran it to Western, we ran it to Northern, we ran, then you come.
Isn't that an achievement?
Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
That's
is,
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy.
We are several nations put it together.
Why don't you appreciate that?
What if it fails?
I'm happy
And
to
he's a good lawyer because Amin is not in the power.
The parish development committee is functional. It is there. That there is a parish chief, that the beneficiary is doing.
So we look at expenditure. We don't look at revenue. And that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance.
Your fountain of new knowledge, flowing into the mass body of knowledge.
First get the knowledge of Bukedia, how they want to be modernized.
Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
You return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Yes. Yes. Hello, a warm welcome this evening, this Wednesday, the 15th of March, 2023. It's a good day. My name is Charles Odongtho and your host. And this evening, we are going to be taking a look at the other parts of the way forward, discussing the way forward on NSSF money and the workers' money, and looking at what can be done better. We have had a lot of discussions around issues NSSF, you know, attempts to share the money, accusations, counter accusations of corruption or attempts to corrupt part of the money of the workers. A parliamentary committee, select parliamentary committee was set up. That committee finalized its report, and some of the recommendations that they brought out, of course, hair-raising, but we are going to be discussing those as well. Shortly, I will be touching on some of the most outstanding ones. But to discuss this, let me start by introducing our panel members. First, from my extreme left, we have Andrew Mwenda. Andrew Mwenda is managing editor of the Independent News magazine. He calls himself Old Man of the Clan. The clan has not yet been mentioned up to now. Andrew Mwenda, you're most welcome to this show. Good to see you again in the new year.
First of all, I am known as the Old Man of the Clan. It's not me who calls myself that. It's because I am 112 years of age. So all of you are my great-grandchildren on this show. Sarah, Omara, Udongo. So, two, I am the head of the African clan. Every African is a member of my clan.
By conscription.
By birth.
Good to see you, Andrew.
Nice to see you, Charles.
Yes.
You have not been inviting me for the last 300 years. I don't know what I did to you. But we shall discuss that off air.
Yes, I think it is better off air. Next to Andrew Mwenda is the Honorable Paul Omara, who is MP for Otuke in the Great Lango sub-region, and he is here to discuss the same. Honorable Omara, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Good. And we have on the show Professor Sarah Sali. who is Dean of the School of Women and Gender Studies. Professor, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Which
Good evening,
university?
viewers.
Makerere, of the great Makerere University. Thank you for reminding me. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be streaming live via YouTube, UBC Television, Uganda, that's on YouTube. We will also be pushing the show via hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. That will be on Twitter. And then if you want to share a message or comment, you want to ask a question, kindly send that to 0709 602592. I will repeat that, 0709 602592. Like I said, one of the recommendations made by the parliamentary committee, this is the Mwine Mpaka committee, that's the MP who chaired the committee and made its recommendation. One, that the minister in charge of the docket, the minister that oversees the NSSF, the minister or in charge of gender, labor and community and social development, Honorable Betty Amongin should resign in public interest. The report says that Honorable Dr. Lyomoki, who is a board member who was named variously, should also resign from the board. And then the report went ahead, among other things, to say that the former NSSF MD and acting MD should also step aside to allow for an investigation over the 1.8 billion shillings allegedly used for corporate social responsibility, also to allow for investigation. Those are some of the issues that came up. But we are looking at NSSF that is the biggest, the most liquid entity in this country. 17.9 trillion shillings in liquidity. No bank has that, not even the biggest banks. And then a dented image that now NSSF faces. Can we rebrand it? Can it be rebranded? Going forward, what can be done? Where should NSSF be investing? Can the savings be improved so that the workers can get, dividends or whatever you want to call it, in double digits as opposed to last year when they got 9.8, I think 9.8 or 9.3 thereabout, as opposed to the other year when it was 12. Going forward, let's start with Andrew. Andrew, you have followed a lot of NSSF issues. The lamentations have been had, the cries have been heard, the investigations have been done. Now we know some more truth, but there are things, of course, behind the headlines that we don't know. Going forward, what do you think is the best for NSSF and for the workers' money? And for Uganda, by the way.
You're asking me to be a preacher in a church rather than an analyst on TV. Because I'm more inclined to think of what is likely to happen rather than what should happen. Ideally, really, what should happen, I think that to argue what will happen, perhaps we need to begin with what went wrong. You see, NSF, I believe, up to now, is a
It's okay.
It's a well-managed organization. You see, when Richard came and became managing director in 2010, NSSF's total assets were about 1.5 trillion. Now they're about 18 trillion. Can't remember, there was something collecting like 7 or 8, 10 billion shillings a month. Now they collect 140 billion a month. You can't tell me that's a failing organization, really. Whether you look at the levels of compliance, profitability, return on worker savings, the organization has been doing well. Where I disagree with not just even the Ugandan public, human beings generally, is if we were to subject any institution, including heaven, to the kind of forensic audit that NSF is subjected, Even if I subject my grandson Omara here, he doesn't know that. I came from his village.
Heaven is blasphemy.
Or my granddaughter Sarah. Anyone watching, you viewers, assuming we were to subject your individual life to a microscopic examination, we would find many mistakes that you make.
It is human, as they say.
So for me, there is nothing during this investigation that was done that I felt is strategically dangerous and which Ugandans have a doomsday view of NSF. Every institution, every home, every individual, every school has so many problems, and the NSSF has succeeded in spite of those problems, and all other organizations, including Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, they succeed in spite of those weaknesses. So there is no big problem out there at NSSF. If you ask me, I think that the problem of NSSF originated from the failure of the managing director, Richard Byarugaba, to build a functional relationship with his new minister. How do you manage a new minister who has come to supervise you? How do you ensure that you create a rapport that smoothens how you relate? That is a skill that you see, although as a managing director of NSF, you are appointed to do a technical job, you are appointed politically. That's why it is the president who appoints you, or a minister who appoints you, a board is appointed by the minister. Anyone who becomes blind to politics will not do a job. Politics, technocracy as you will see it, is a vehicle for politics. Politics is not a vehicle for technocracy. Omara here is elected to represent people, and that parliament is elected to represent people. Ultimately, he's the one who becomes a minister. We don't appoint ministers simply because they're technocratically competent, but because they're politically savvy. So if you're a technocrat, you need to balance the technocratic interests of an organization with the political realities that you are facing. The greatness of Mutevile and people like Chris Kasama and Keith Mwakanizi was that they understood how to strike a balance between technocracy and politics. And they were able to pursue a particular reform agenda for Uganda for so many years by keeping Museveni on board. If Museveni felt that the reforms Uganda carried out in the late 80s, 90s were a threat to his power, those reforms would not have been carried out, and Mutevile would not have been, books would not have been written about him, how he was a technocrat who drove reform. It's his understanding of how do you manage a political supervisor and keep them focused. And in doing that, you will be forced to make trade-offs and concessions, which I would call tactical, in order to sustain your strategic objective. You have, what is your strategic objective? Even Omara here, you know, my grandson, even you, Sarah, if you're in a marriage, there are tactical compromises you make with your spouse in order to sustain the relationship. You may disagree. If you said, me, these are my principles, I cannot change anything, you cannot ever sustain a relationship with anyone. So I think that's where the problem started. That if you ask me going forward, NSSF needs a managing director who defends the institutional integrity of the organization, the performance of the organization, and to do that he must understand the kind of complicated trade-offs they need to make, tactical concessions here and there in order to ensure that the institution is protected. Because if you become hard, what happens? Let me tell you, there are so many people who want to be managing directors of NSSF who will give politicians a sway to dip their fingers into NSSF money. There are 1 million Ugandan people who are going to apply for that job. You should know. So you ask yourself, if I am the one who is building this successful organization, what are the minor compromises I'll make? Because the next alternative who may come there may not have those technocratic considerations that I have. You opting out because you don't agree with your minister is defeatist, because there have been other people who are willing to come in and actually not even defend the technocratic integrity of the organization. So I feel that's where the problem begins. So NSSF going forward needs a person who is able to balance political reality with technocratic requirements.
To what extent, Mr. Honorable Mara? That balancing, to what extent must it go? You are a finance man, you are a money man, you are a figure man, and you have run a big financial institution. What we're talking about is certainly humongous, but comparisons can be made. To what extent should that balancing be done? And would it be done is it easy to do it in the interest of the stakeholders, primary or otherwise?
Yeah. Thank you, Charles, and the members of the panel, the great panel team here. Just to give you the status of NSSF, as also contained in the report of the Select Committee. As you already alluded to, NSSF is one of the biggest, is actually number one biggest institution in the country in terms of cash. In fact, the committee noted that it is Stanbic, ABSA, and Standard Chartered combined.
Wow.
That's how big it is. And for us bankers, when it comes to the money markets and the bond markets, the number one player in that market is NSSF, followed by Stanbic. So that is how big it is. Then secondly, also, it requires that the people who come to manage it must be people of a certain intellect. That is why, for example, you find the investment committees. These are people who should have deep knowledge of financial instruments and products. And therefore, it requires very knowledgeable people to run NSSF. I want to agree with you that NSSF in the last 10 years have really made a lot of progress. And you can see, by the way, today, that fund is now 18.2 trillion shillings. And therefore, it requires a lot of prudence and corporate governance standards. I think in addition to what Andrew has mentioned in terms of failure, I think also there was a failure around the corporate governance. When we did the amendment of the law and it became effective in January, I think 2021, effectively, and Minister Honorable Betty Amongi came to supervise the fund, the law actually gave some kind of dual reporting to Minister of Finance, looking at the investment arm, and then Minister of Labor.
For policy.
Yes, policy, governance, and things like that. And then also it expanded the role of NSSF, allowing for voluntary savers to come in. And therefore, NSSF is going through a kind of transformation as well. Now, I wouldn't want to go deep into the what the committee, the Select Committee found out, and I believe they really did a good job. As a board, if you, I've been a board member and still a board member in a number of organizations. Now, for you to allow the MD to propose a bribe to you as a board, it means actually the corporate governance has collapsed. And look at the size of the fund. You're dealing with 18.2 trillion fund, and you begin to entertain corruption. Then that is actually another layer, because it is actually very tempting. You really need to have men and women of integrity who are willing to do this for the sake of the country. And because actually in terms of the retainers, they are paid well, and also in sitting allowances, and the perks are good. You don't really have to do anything beyond.
Is that the one they were talking about, 10 million that had been increased? Is that the one?
That's a retainer, I think. Yes. A retainer is at about 10, 15 million shillings. We'll confirm the figures. And the sitting allowances. And also when they travel, they were getting 10% of their retainer as a contribution towards NSSF and so forth. So generally, in terms of perks, they're already receiving some money. But now, when you begin now to say, okay, beyond this, let's go and sit down and see how we can pay ourselves through corruption, the corporate governance has failed. So for me, that was the most shocking part out of all that, out of that enterprise. But I think going forward, you will see that the fund will continue to grow. I agree that the fund is not in danger, because 78% of that fund is in tradable securities, that is treasury bills and bonds. That's the liquid cash. So no money is lost there. That one you can still go and discount and get your cash out. 15% on equities within the East African region. And Andrew, it's important to know that over $1 billion of our money is in the is in Kenya.
1.2 billion.
1.2 billion and over 600 million in Tanzania. And actually this fund is helping our neighbors, not actually
Helping us.
Yeah, helping us. So going forward, we really need to do a lot of things. There should be a kind of reform in the law to allow because NSSF is guided by an investment policy, which really box them in a corner. How they are supposed to invest the money is well stipulated within the policy, and also HUBRA's guidelines. There's nothing that they can do with outside what has been prescribed in the guidelines. So there is need for us to review the policies and making sure that we can use the fund to create more investment in the country in terms of building key infrastructures that we need as a country instead of going outside to borrow. And many of the developed countries do that. They use pension funds and provident funds to create big infrastructural development. And the only good thing in some of the countries is that the corruption is basically very limited because of strong laws and governance structures that are available. So I know Ugandans normally get a big sense of trepidation when they hear NSSF money should be used for the purposes of developing the country. I'm one person who would support a reform. I'll give you an example. Omeme will soon leave. You know, we'll have to.
Will they?
Yeah, they will. Now, instead of us going to borrow money or, dipping into our pocket to pay off Omeme, NSSF can do that. And it becomes part of a huge equity under NSSF because they don't need that money now. Instead of putting that money in Kenya, you bring that money and put it in
Uganda.
Yeah, in Omeme. And you just imagine how much money do we pay for electricity on a daily basis. So there should be a very dramatic change going forward to making sure that there is reform in NSSF. Currently, I think the leadership that have remained behind are really capable of transiting it, leading it, because they're the same team that have been doing the job, although Parliament is saying some of them need to step aside. I was not around when that debate was going on. This fund is so big, getting an investment banker or an investment manager to run a fund like NSSF is not an easy thing. You can't just pick them on the street. You really have to go and look, spend time. So we have to be cautious that we allow the minister, the new board, and the management to deal with any corporate governance and administrative lapses that have been identified by the select committee in that report, to really deal with it going forward. And let me say within a 6 months, 1 year period, and report to Parliament. So that we can be now certain that issues that were raised are dealt with. Okay. We shouldn't just throw away everybody and let them go away. We will actually create more crisis in the fund.
Professor, Honorable Mara refers a lot to creating new laws, amending, if you like, reviewing the policy to put in place new measures to protect the workers' money, but also to ensure that investments are targeted and deliberately, strategically, to grow the country's economic base. Is that an easy thing to do with NSSF going forward? You think that there is that policy reform is important to undertake?
Yes, thank you very much, Charles. I think the policy reform is easy to undertake, but it depends on what is it you're trying to cure. Has what happened because of lack of policy, or was it because of lack of controls? Of course, we've had issues of the challenges raised about dual reporting and having two supervisors. I haven't seen the report, so I will not really base myself on the report. What the little I know about the report is what you're picking from the public. So Honorable Mara will comment on the detail of the report. But the issue is, for me, it's a very big fund in a very poor country. So that's bound to create excitement at the level of implementation, but also in the public. When we hear trillions, I mean, you've never handled 100 million in one go, and you're hearing that it is 18 trillion. So that is a problem. But also, I think the mere fact that's being investigated, or that when these things happen, government does investigations, is a process of confidence building. I know in the public there's this cynicism that investigations are just bureaucratic ways of killing a hot cake. But I think these are also ways of restoring confidence for a fund like NSSF. I think the investigation was very much in order. Then the other thing that comes to my mind with the little that was trickling into the media is the question of how much controls were there. Because those who have worked in banks, like Honorable Mara, will tell you that there are quite a number of controls in a bank, however small or big it is. And those of us on the outside always believe that's not very easy to do certain things in banks, but we don't know what happens behind. But when you hear the kind of stories that are being told about NSSF, and of course they were not really touching the main fund, they are touching the bonuses, they are touching the extras.
Profits.
But all the same, they are big, okay? So then this creates a lot of anxiety. But I think the truth of the matter is that the funds are secure, but people need to have some more controls in the process. But I think for me, out of all these things, this is an opportunity to reflect on how well the fund should be done, should be managed. I imagine those who have done the investigation, Parliament, the two-line ministries, are going to reflect on this fund more and see what else can it do for the country. The question of using the fund to develop the country instead of the monies developing other countries has come up very often in the public, and instead of us borrowing. So probably this is one of the things I expect the supervisors of the fund, or I mean the supervisors of the country, to look into. And of course the other thing that the investigation brought to light was the fact that there are many employees who would have been paying in NSSF, but they have not all been onboarded. And maybe that's why people wanted to engage in desensitization. So this is now another opportunity, probably, where there could be a policy gap that needs to be addressed. How do we onboard workers? And if you consider the whole concept of social security as a way that secures and protects people, programs, strategies government undertakes to enable people, particularly the vulnerable people, secure themselves and overcome or transit through crises and risks. Maybe it is also high time we expanded our understanding of social security. Of course, we have this provident fund where people who are salaried send either 5 and 10 and therefore the 15% of their earnings, which is already being debated because not everyone seems to be complying with that. But also, if you imagine that the biggest chunk of our population is not in that sector, and that population may also need to be onboarded. What else at policy level? Because you asked, could we need another policy framework? Maybe we may need another policy framework, not necessarily for NSSF, for the salaried people, but to find how do you onboard an informal sector worker. Of course, there is the way of, there is the policy now that there is voluntary contribution. But is that voluntary contribution catering for the informal sector worker? Can it cater for a peasant farmer? Can it cater? So maybe if we are talking about terms of policy, those are the kind of things we should be looking into. But I really support the idea of using the fund to develop the country rather than it developing other countries, especially in terms of big infrastructure developments and save the country a high debt burden where you borrow at very high rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Andrew, this question is interesting. The question of NSSF money should be prioritized, used here, not to develop the neighborhoods or something. Charity begins at home, if you like. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that, is it safer?
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood?
Than at home?
Than at home?
Well, I think that contrary to a lot of the convictions of Ugandans. In fact, the government of Uganda does not much interfere with NSSF money. The only interference it does is the central bank sells treasury bonds and bills, and the NSSF buys, and they buy at very good interest rates.
I agree.
To that degree, why Ugandans are always scared that somehow government wants to steal their money, I don't know where it comes from. It is under government supervision that the fund has grown from, as we said, from 1.5 trillion to almost 18.2 trillion today.
18.2.
So that is one. The second thing is, I think government of Uganda needs, because the supervisor of NSSF, to decide what is the role of NSSF in Uganda's development. Or for that matter, how should NSSF be managed? Currently, I suspect NSSF is managed purely to ensure that the people who serve with it, Ugandan workers, get a good return on their investment. I don't think it is anywhere within NSSF policy to say this is a country with very low levels of long-term savings, and the country being underdeveloped needs long-term savings to finance long-term investments. I don't see that anywhere. So if you are a managing director of NSSF and the only mandate to prove your credentials is to ensure that the people saving with you get a high return, you look for that high return wherever you can find it. I think the original NSSF law did not allow NSSF to invest outside of Uganda. There was an amendment that allowed it to invest a certain percentage within the region. I don't think NSSF can invest in stocks on the New York Exchange or whatever. It's not allowed. So I think the managers at NSSF saw opportunities in Rwanda, they saw opportunities in Tanzania, they saw opportunities in Kenya, and they went there. Now, just imagine a country like this that is going all over the world asking foreign investors to come here. Why are we always looking for foreign investors? It is because our savings are so low to finance our development needs, we need to go and look for other people's savings. But it doesn't make sense for you to get even the little savings you have, 1.2 billion, go and invest it in Kenya. That's not a problem of NSF management, it's a problem of government policy. Government needs to have a strategic policy blueprint which says this is the role NSSF can play in national development. Let me give you an important example. You see, transformative investments require capital far in excess of what private capitalists, private entrepreneurs in these poor countries can raise. So you should ask yourself, what should be the role of the state? The role of the state could be to mobilize these long-term savings to finance these long-term transformative investments. NSSF is an important beginning point. So when Uganda say, we don't want the government of Uganda to get involved in our pensions and things like that, they're simply saying the state in Uganda should not play any role in national development. Because if I want to trade, I can go to any bank in Uganda, get an overdraft or a loan, and go to China, buy goods and sell them here. I just need maybe 3-4 months of an overdraft or a loan for me to pay back. A commercial bank cannot lend long-term. Why? Because it takes short-term deposits from its customers. So Andrew Mwenda and Odongotho have put their deposits in, let me say, Centenary Bank. If Centenary Bank invests this money in a factory to manufacture phones, and that factory alone is 20 years, what happens when Odongotho comes to collect his money on the ATM tomorrow? There will be what we call a liquidity mismatch. So commercial banks cannot lend the short-term deposits they have for long-term purposes. The question therefore is, if you're looking for long-term development finance in Uganda, where do you get it from? You go back to NSSF. If you look at countries like Japan, Japan used the postal savings system to mobilize funds from the population to finance what you see as Toyota, you see as Nissan, you see as Honda, as Toshiba, as Mitsubishi, the industries that actually transformed that country. So right now, Uganda doesn't have any such strategy of mobilizing long-term savings of Ugandans to finance these long-term investment projects. You cannot invest in a factory, maybe you want to begin producing cars or mobile phones or whatever it is today and expect to become profitable in the next 5 years or 7 years or even 10 years. It may take long. So the gestation period of transformative investments is really, really long. So NSSF is an important player. The question you should be asking, we should be asking, what is the government policy on NSSF savings? The second thing that we need to address with the NSSF. I don't know whether it is, as Omar says, corporate governance. The governance rules are there. I think what may have happened is maybe they have been violated here and there. It is maybe corporate practice. The ethics or rules for governance, the policies are there that protect the institutional integrity of NSSF. I think what has failed at NSSF, as I said earlier, is how do you protect the fund if politics dictated that there should be some form of interference? Let me ask, I'm a realist. Why do people get appointed to those boards? Do you really think most of those people are appointed on those boards purely to do the technical work of NSSF? Because I really believe that we should be realistic. Let me come to this. My own understanding is the government of Uganda wants to reward some of its political supporters or some trade unions who make noise and things like that. They put those people on the board. So once they're on the board, what are those people's expectations? I have this sense that maybe they are allies of the government and the government wants to provide them opportunities to get something. Right? So if you put them there and NSSF is dry and not getting anything, then you're not solving the political problem. So the political problem... So if you are an MD of NSSF, of National Water and Sewage Corporation, of Uganda, whatever it is, this is something you need to know. To Uganda, National Roads Authority, all these big organizations with big money.
They're political.
They are sending these board members. Are really sending them to just sit there and focus on road construction? Maybe they lost the constituency where they were earning money. Omar lost his constituency in Otuke. And now you want to put him somewhere he can have something. Yeah. So if I am an MD or CEO of such an organization, I need to find a way to ensure that that political interest is served, so that Omar is not desperate. Maybe some fuel allowance and this, he can travel abroad. So what I'm saying is a lot of what we are complaining is a political necessity. A lot of these boards are there to perform two functions: as political rewards for loyalty, but also to help supervise. You have to balance those two. If you think you are just there, that these board members are appointed technically, and you don't address the political intentions which are unmentioned, unsaid of either the president or the minister, then you will be really in the wrong job.
Andrew, ordinarily, board members are supposed to be, in the main, self-achievers. People who are not joining the board to really go and earn. They already have resources of their own.
That's the ideal.
Now, they are appointed to the board on the basis of their knowledge, their expertise, their experience to add value to the organization. But now, as you've said, if you appoint people who have failed an election and said, let me give this one a job, they will go with all manners of intentions. And that should not be NSSF, by the way. The board members who are going to NSSF must be really... And by the way, the current board, if you look at them, they're not bad people or whatever. They are good people. Self-achievers are there. But maybe they will say one bad apple can spoil the entire thing. So my recommendation would be get people who are strong, people who are not corrupt, to really be on the board of NSSF. That would help because, so that you stand up. The board is supposed to...
being theoretical and idealistic.
No.
Honorable.
That can never...
Honorable, let me ask a rejoinder to that.
Yes.
Can a poor, needy, unemployed man who has tasted, for example, 40 million per month in Parliament, 35 million per month in Parliament, be strong with a strong spine?
Why do you have to take them there? I've already told you.
But I'm just giving an example.
But supposing they've already gone there, isn't that now the case for internal controls?
I am told there is an international labor organization, a kind of a policy that will require labor representatives on the board of an organization like NSSF, but they are supposed now to filter and send good people. And by the way, the board can sit and determine what kind of person the union is going to send to it. But we have the law. The board members are appointed by the minister. At the time was appointed by the Minister for Finance. Now that the role has been given to Labor, it will be the Minister of Labor that will appoint. But there should be a criteria that should be put in place so that even if the minister is going to appoint, must get credible people onto that role. But Charles, I want to add that NSSF, in terms of their strategic plan, by 2025, they want that fund to grow to a 20 trillion fund. And that is an ambition, and they are set on it. In 2021, NSSF added 1.4 trillion as interest to the savers. And they had a budget to 200 billion shillings.
For operations.
For operations. Yeah. But they have added 1.4 trillion to the savers. Almost 7 times what they have spent. Yeah. So when for us in the corporate world, you pay people bonus for them to perform. So you shouldn't criticize the bonus issues. I was very happy with Honorable Segona when he put a great show during the debate at Parliament. I was not there. So that you don't punish people that you've been given a lot of money, you are not being prudent, but when actually in terms of value, these guys are delivered substantially to the savers. 1.4 trillion. And this financial year, they're looking at about 1.5, 1.6 trillion. So I don't want the public outside there to look at NSSF staff as being, feeding on their money. Those guys are there planning daily to making sure that there is a return on investment. So that is one area that we need to be very cautious about. And then there is a midterm access. The policy came, now that law is in place. So every time and then, remember there are people who are reaching the midterm and they are accessing their money. That money now must continue. And that money is coming back to us, the savers. Is a policy issue. But I think, and then the amendment which was made in the law on voluntary savers, we need to make sure that that happens. I think that is what the controversy that came with the minister on the 6 billion. I think the minister was, in our presentation, was saying, I wanted that money so that we reach the 17 million target savers, yes, who are outside there. We need to bring them into NSSF. So I think in terms of our saving culture, 20 trillion maybe is not enough. Why not 30 trillion and 50 trillion? We should be looking at bigger targets so that we have this collective saving. And as Andrew has argued, we can now use that money to really purpose our development agenda. Okay. Instead of going outside there to borrow money, and it's actually here around our necks. And so therefore, Charles, my recommendation is that we must consider really to reform NSSF and also legislate and attendant laws that will allow NSSF to be used for the purpose of our strategic development.
Yeah. How about the question of, there is the question of the investment policies, reviewing the policies that we had talked about. Andrew, is this a good way to think through some of the changes we are thinking about, some of the improvements? Let me call them not changes but improvements. Or are we overbeating the guys at NSSF actually?
Because as I told you earlier, anybody looking at what has happened at NSSF over the last 10 years cannot say the managers there were incompetent, corrupt, or whatever it is. You just need to look at record. You look at the levels of compliance. You look at the profitability of the organization. Look at the growth of the assets of the fund. Actually, even you look at the ease with which it is possible now to withdraw your money. Those days, a person would reach retirement age and spend 3 years.
You die even without getting.
Without getting. Now, within 2 weeks, you'll have your money paid. So NSSF is an organization that has really been performing very well. It is so unfortunate that it has been dragged. Another thing that the NSSF management had achieved is to withdraw NSSF from the media. You know, NSSF from 1995, when Abel Katemba was there, up to the time David Jamwa was kicked out, up to the time Richard Yarogaba joined in 2010, it was constantly in the press over the wrong reasons. Every managing director would live either in a scandal, then end up in jail. I remember Onegio Bell, my friend, was chairman, went to jail. On all the wrong things, Jamwa is still in jail. It was just a place which destroyed careers. The last 10 years, or the last 12 years, NSSF moved away from scandals and enjoyed a period of growth. They have been paying savings, rather an interest rate above inflation. So it has really been a good organization. To say that because they did an investigation and found some, what was it, corporate social responsibility or some team building cases in Dubai that cost a lot of money, that is, you know, picking little things and trying to amplify them. Overall, I can tell you, you know that, by the way, although Uganda is the smallest economy in the original East African community, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, NSSF is the largest provident fund, not a pension fund, a provident fund in East Africa. So it has been a very good organization. It is a well-run organization. This is not to say it's a perfect organization, because as I have said, there is no perfect human institution. It's just Uganda is a human experiment, and every human experiment will have those weaknesses. So if you asked me what NSSF lacks, is perhaps to say, at a technical level, how NSSF's investments are so concentrated in a government paper. Normally, you are advised, if you are running a provident fund of that type, that
the bonds and bills,
your investments must be duration matched with your liabilities. You see, a young man has finished university, he's called Omara, is 21. He's going to, he starts working and saving with NSSF at 21. He will get his or her money after they are 55. So they have 34 years to go. You must have investments. So your liability as NSSF is 34 years. You must have investments that are duration matched to this liability that you have. And when you have things like equities and real estate taking only 10 or 12% of your portfolio, and 88% of your portfolio are government bonds of 6 months or 1 year or 5 years, you clearly see that your portfolio mix is badly skewed. Of course, if an NSSF person will tell you that is also because the opportunities are not so much there. Whatever opportunities on the Uganda stock market, you know that the NSSF is the biggest investor in the Uganda stock market. In fact, Omar, you should know that the largest shareholder in Umeme is actually NSSF. They own 23%. They could even be owning more.
They can buy it out any day.
Yes. They could even have owned more in Umeme because if they took, let's say, if they became the largest shareholder, maybe took 26%, I was told, they would, Umeme would be subjected to government procurement and PPDA, which would make it, why are you shaking your head? Which would make the performance of the organization much more difficult. Yes. But if you asked me, government of Uganda had committed to Umeme to have a rate of return of 20% on the dollar. That could even be 30% of the shilling, given the depreciation of the shilling. So I wonder why government of Uganda would allow foreign investors to benefit from this.
Instead of
20% of the dollar.
Instead of savers.
Not savers. I don't mind, by the way, if most of all the money of NSSF, even if we paid a huge rate of return to NSSF, if it's going to your own citizens, what do you lose? It's like when a government is borrowing. Please, my grandson, Odomofe, I want you to look here. You take Uganda as a company, as a balance sheet, assuming all the government bonds that they put up are bought by Ugandan citizens, even if they were borrowed at 20%. On the balance sheet of Uganda Inc., every liability of government would be an asset to its citizens. You get it?
Yeah.
So it will be balanced. There is nothing, there is no wealth that would have been taken out of Uganda. Whatever government owes, it owes its own citizens. Even if it pays a high interest rate, it's enriching its own citizens, which is good for everybody. The problem, of course, with Uganda is that the largest players in the financial sector are multinational banks. They are not owned here. So your Stanbic Bank, you Standard Chartered Bank, ABSA, whatever it is, you go and buy government treasury bonds. Right now, a 10-year bond is 18.9%.
Crazy.
You buy at that rate, you make a, you don't even lend to Ugandan entrepreneurs to do business. You rake huge profits at the end of the year, and you ship them to South Africa, London, Dubai, everywhere. How does Uganda benefit? So the fact that our financial sector is heavily owned and controlled by multinational capital shows that every liability in the form of these government bonds on the government balance sheet is actually also a liability of the country.
Okay.
But also you need to note that although the law was done to enable NSSF invest outside Uganda, but also the money markets here, the government bonds and treasury bills are not enough for NSSF. Otherwise the money would be redundant here. There would be nowhere to invest.
It would still be redundant.
Exactly. So you have
because
now...
the money is too big.
Yes. Otherwise,
And
the
the
money would now
economy
be in fixed deposit with commercial banks. So you really now need to create territory for it. I was telling people that is 37%, 38% of our national budget. That's a huge amount of money. So you have to give it a breathing space with the neighbors to really have some return there. But most importantly also, we need also a serious reform, an intellectual reform in the Ministry of Finance to begin to think through all these things that we are talking about, so that we begin to look at NSSF and the opportunities available and the reforms that we need so that this money can be properly invested in the country. Without that one, NSSF, somebody will just sit there and collect, and you just play with derivatives and you see, okay, where can I put this money? And that's it, and you sit. And yet this money can be so transformative. And I think also what we must do, Charles, is to restore the trust of citizens in us, the leaders, that we won't do any harm to them. One of, I think, the most erroneous allegation which is made is that the government of Uganda has been misusing NSSF money. That's not true. There is no way government of Uganda can come and put its proboscis in the NSSF. What the government, how government uses NSSF is through the central bank, putting in the treasury bills and bonds. They just go, NSSF just goes and buys, and the government has that money and uses it. But it will later on on the due date it will pay back. So now people say, our money is not safe. So there is need for communication to the people of Uganda to just say, no government of Uganda has ever touched your money.
Professor, is it possible? Is it easy?
It's actually ignorance.
Is it easy to restore this trust within this year, from your own look of things, NSSF, I mean to restore the dented image and ensure that there is more trust and then more people come on board, including the voluntary savers. Is it possible in the near future?
Within 1 year? Wow. I wish it was possible. And I think maybe, I would say maybe it's not possible, but it's not possible not because NSSF has a problem. It's not possible because that's the culture we have allowed to evolve in this country, that no one trusts anything said by the leaders. And I don't know why. And in the past, if you're in Kampala, you would think it's because people don't trust the leadership of this country. When you go to the districts, people don't trust even the leadership there. So it looks like every layer of leadership is not trusted.
But that's not a Ugandan problem. I was
maybe.
reading. I was
Yeah,
reading.
take
I was
over.
reading some literature.
Yeah.
In the U.S., actually, I think now trust of politicians is it about 39%?
No.
37.
Of Congress is 3%.
So you're talking about the political
Gone to
leaders.
that low,
I'm telling you.
Andrew. Uganda is still about 47. I think it used to be beyond.
Yeah.
I think Uganda now it's going down, and every time it goes down.
Yeah, but you see, interestingly, it's not just the politicians people don't trust. People don't trust the religious leaders. People don't trust the cultural. They just don't trust anything. Maybe there's some little confidence for cultural leaders, but even technocrats, they don't trust them. So what you're seeing in NSSF is not an isolated thing. It is a cultural thing, and maybe it's because of the way power has played out in this country, not just at the top, but at all these levels. I think we are a population that adores people in power. We give them a lot of mileage, then we beginning to complain when that power returns to bite us. The big man syndrome in villages and that kind of thing. So there is that complaint, but it's possible, I think, through processes that you get, like these investigations that are made public.
Yeah.
Those are actually mechanisms of confidence building. And maybe we should also know that NSSF is not the only provident fund we have here. There are many, I think there are now around 4 or 6, but at least I know in Makerere we have a retirement benefit scheme and everything.
Yeah.
So you don't get something that is open to public scrutiny like NSSF. So if you imagine those that are there and you're not hearing, and you hear about NSSF, okay, it has been an A+ performer, but now being investigated, people tend to trust those that become transparent over time than those which are quiet, even if no one is making noise. So I think this process of the investigation and what the authorities are going to do with that investigation might be a way of actually restoring trust, and then we shall see more contributors coming on board voluntarily.
Okay.
So let me give you numbers from the Pew Research.
The Pew Research.
Yes.
What is the latest? From where?
This is September 14th. This was done August 23rd to July 23rd to August 4th last year.
Okay.
So it was produced in 14th September last year. Just 20% of US adults say they trust government in Washington to do the right thing.
Only 20%. So we are still better, but it is getting worse as well, because I'm told the better educated the society becomes, the more self-reliant the society becomes, the more less trust
But
they
also
develop for their leaders, especially political leaders.
Yes, but that's why providing information of what is happening does help a lot. I know you were talking something about trusting the ministers to a point, and one thing I've been always told is, in God we trust, in everyone else we audit. So if you can put in place processes and procedures, and everyone sees those being transparently followed, then the trust can be restored. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's time that we go for a break. And let's take that break now. And when we come back, I will be reading your comments, your questions, and all your other thoughts. And we will be discussing them, incorporating them into the discussion here. It's behind the headlines. Don't touch that remote.
With freedom. Get MTN Freedom Voice Bundles that don't expire. Dial *100 *21# or my MTN app for more bundles. Together, we're unstoppable.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride, and as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
Paying your bills the old way.
Let's go, let's go. Just need to buy some power.
Paying your bills with the My Airtel app.
Bro, there's a line.
You have the power in your pocket. The power to instantly pay your bills hassle-free. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
Oh, you're back.
Introducing the all-new Roofing's TMX 500C rebars with cut and bend surfaces. Roofing's, strength of a nation.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Look no further. Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates, and now sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Plus, you can trust Airtel Money to get your money where it needs to go quickly and safely. Simply dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
We are back. Welcome back, and we are on air now. We have in the studio Andrew Mwijuni Mwenda, Independent News Magazine CEO, and
old man of the clan.
Old man.
Grandfather of the continent.
Grandfather of the whole continent of Africa.
Including the South Africans.
Yes, it's the continent.
From Cape Town to Alexandria.
And the diaspora.
Also, yes, all descendants of African peoples in the Caribbean and other parts of the world.
Honorable Mara Paul, Professor Sarah Sally. Let's take some, I'm going to share some of the comments that we have had coming in. Someone called Paul Nsubuga says, Charles, in my opinion, I think the people who are supposed to be on board should be the rich, on the board of NSSF, should be the rich people who have seen money. But if you get these ones of your 30 million, they will steal the money.
By the way, let me answer.
Why not Andrew? Andrew, they are saying that you are very rich, that you should be on the board yourself.
Andrew will walk with the tower on his head.
He'll steal the tower.
Odongo, so let me tell you, you'll be surprised that the amount of money a person has does not determine whether they will not try to dip your fingers. In fact, richer people who are greedy may want to use their influence to even dip more of their fingers into NSF money. And you may find a person who has very little, but they are satisfied. So wealth, I think, is a function of your heart rather than a function of the things that you possess. There are people whom I have met who have very little, and I'm not too hungry to grab this, grab the other, and this one. And I've seen people with a lot of money. They cannot tire to trying to grab this, pull the other one, cheat this one. So, Nsubuga, really, you need to deal with some rich people. You to know that's not the amount of money you have, but the kind of heart that you have that determines your attitude towards the public trust that has been given to you.
A good example was late Mulwana. Yes, was impeccable.
But maybe what they are really meaning, which I've also heard coming up very often, is that the people who sit on the board are not representative of employees, or of those who pay of savers, neither they representative of those
they should be independent.
who employ them.
Yeah.
So they are thinking that probably if you have representatives of the people, the savers, and representatives of those who employ them, probably it would be more representative.
That is, you know, we have 4 members on the board of NSSF who are from unions, so representing really workers.
Yeah.
We have, I think, a representative of employers. Right now it is the Managing Director of National Water and Sewage Corporation, Silva Mcha. He sits there to represent the Association of Employers. Then, of course, the Ministry of Gender sends its permanent secretary, and the Ministry of Finance sends its permanent secretary. So
But
government...
there's been a complaint about trade unions, because people say these have been careerist politicians within the trade union sector. So they are not in any way representative of savers or those who pay the savers.
So the problem,
that's where you see
the problem, Sarah, is
majority.
this, that if you are not unionized, how do you elect representatives there? Because the unionized workers may be 5% of all workers in Uganda, but they are organized. This 95%, how do they elect someone to represent them? Because they're not organized. So that is one problem. But the other problem people would raise is it should not be the quantity but the quality. You find that maybe 10% of NSSF savers, just the rather 10% of NSF contributors have 90% of the savings.
Yeah.
Because this vast majority of workers, they have 2 million, they have 3 million, but you find one person and having 5 billion, or can we say 3 billion, one person. So should we have representation on the basis of how much money you have, or how many heads you are, how many souls? All these contradictions.
That is a policy issue. But Charles,
but I ask you, Omara, what should be the issue? The amount of should we get those who have 80% of the money and say this is the guys who should be?
They should have more say because they have more interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or should it
Because they have
be
more money.
how many souls are saving within NSSF, and that should be the defining factor?
that can.
Or it should also be those people on the board also saving within NSSF. Or they are not saving.
That's an interesting.
Now
Because
they are
that's where the debate is coming from, that many of them actually do not even save with the fund.
Charles, I think the key issue with members of the board is that even if you are coming from the union, some of them have been career unionists or activists, and that they bring that behavior even up to the board. A moment you land on the board, you are now a totally different person.
What should be their qualification, in your view, to make it better?
I have already, it might not be academic qualification or whatever, but somebody who has been successful, who has achieved something in life, who has a wide range of experience.
What do you mean? What do you mean
has
exactly?
achieved something in
Has
life?
achieved something.
Somebody who has been in, who has headed a big institution and has run it successfully without a scandal.
How many are those in your country?
We can count them, but we need to look for NSSF at least. Look for here. You need about 9 or 12 board members. I don't know how many they are, or normally in,
I think 9 or 8.
In odd numbers, 9.
There's a chairman, 4 workers representatives, 1 representative of employees. Then
Ministry of
Ministry of Gender and Ministry of Finance,
Ministry
about 8.
Yeah, you can get at least good 9 people in Uganda, top notch, to run that thing. So that even if you are coming from the union, just know now, as a board member, you can no longer, a moment a board makes a decision, has taken a decision, no board member can go and stand there and start talking about
but you see, Omara,
something contradictory.
Omara, the problem has been that this board is not a technical issue, it is a political one. Actually, the government of Uganda wanted to reduce this kind of having a retired nurse, a retired police constable, a retired so and so sitting on the board. But the trade unions, because they are organized, you know, if you're not organized, you can be 80 people, there can be 10,000 people. But 1,000, who is 10%, who are organized, they can make their voice heard. The unions raised dust, threatened fire and brimstone, and the president caved in. And so the union said they are going to elect. Now, when we go to run for elections, when you go to run for elections, it is the most popular one.
Have you read Mpaka's report on how the election was done? That's
The
another
elections
issue.
also get rigged and things like that. But the unions put pressure on the political system to refuse what you're recommending. So even members of parliament who lose elections and want to sit on the board, they don't want to be disqualified from running. So in the parliament, you may not even pass a law protecting the institution integrity of NSSF. The third one is Bank of Uganda, being the supervisor of the financial sector, had put in place rules to say, for you to sit on the board of such a powerful financial institution, because you need to keep it. These are the qualifications you need to have. But I think they had to withdraw they had wanted to put the bar so high. They said, but this is a workers' thing. Why do you want to get these people who are high there, who you are ignoring? So it became political. And I always tell my friends, always politics wins.
Of course. It is the superstructure.
It is the superstructure. Because ultimately, Museveni himself does not get appointed technically. He gets elected politically. Bobby Wine, no one can say these are the qualifications of a president. He will be elected whether people like him or whether people like him. And you ask who are the majority of the people who vote.
Yeah.
The quality of the people you're talking about don't vote. It is even happening in the judiciary now.
Yes.
Criminals will go there.
You want to talk? Dixon Kahuna.
if it touches,
when you see a man who talks a lot saying, I will not talk, then you know there is a problem. Dixon Kahunga says we need to determine the kind of board we need at NSSF. Will it be ceremonial, liberated, or progressive? That's what Dixon Kahunga is saying. And then Mikhail Wilson from Namugongo, Kampala says, the solution is to liberalize the pension sector. Allow other players, not just NSSF, to come in, and Ugandans should be free to choose whom they save their money with. Like the case of Tanzania, where there are over 5 pension service providers. Don't we have many... a number of, except that they are not pronounced.
Let me make that comment.
Yeah.
On social security, there is nowhere in the world where social security has been liberalized, not even in the US.
Oh.
Nowhere. Because you see, the problem, what will happen is...
Why don't they?
Because you see, there are problems with these derivatives. Somebody can form a fund with a sexy name, just like the way the global financial crisis happened. So then the guys who have these pension funds, for example, if it's liberalized, they are taking a chunk of it. Maybe somebody has taken 7 trillion. Then because of a high return that Andrew alluded to, they invest in those products, and it just wipe out overnight. That fund will go.
But it also happened in the 2008 financial crisis.
So you can't liberalize.
Many pension funds actually lost a lot of money.
Lost a lot of money.
In these,
you cannot.
Someone called Julius from Entebbe says, behind the headlines, good evening. I expected a better parliament report on NSSF. Unfortunately, our parliament has let us down. I wonder what Honorable Omara can say about their own report that has wasted taxpayers' money. So that aside, NSSF, like most organizations, have challenges balancing board functions with management. The boards are often so weak and neither technical. So the management team usually overlooks them, which is a major problem where boards are appointed. So way forward is rethink if we really need boards and what kind of board. Thank you. That's Julius from Entebbe. Honorable Mara, Professor, what do you say about that?
Julius, I think Honorable Mpaka and the team did a great job. And their recommendations, I think many of you watched on TV or had the opportunity to read. I listened to the Acting Managing Director, Patrick Ayota, responding to the findings. He actually recognized and said it highlighted certain issues that you know, they will have now to deal with so that they can correct it and the fund becomes better. So I think we shouldn't throw away and say the committee's report wasted time. And as you're aware also, this investigation has not ended. There's a Auditor General is going to do a forensic investigation. IGG also is at the moment interviewing people. So possibly, as Professor Sarah says, an investigation is not a bad thing. It improves. It keeps on making the organization to improve. So let's not be dismissive or you know, disregard Parliament. Parliament has done a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, I just wanted to say that actually boards are not a bad idea, but probably it's the way they are prepared. You know, we have a Makerere Universal Retirement Benefit Scheme. So initially some of us were in NSSF, some of us were in Makerere DAP, but then with the ruling, I think, of the Solicitor General, we were all taken into the Makerere Universal Retirement Benefit Scheme. And we are regulated by UBRA. But those who get onto the board of trustees, for us to have a board of trustees, the trustees have to be trained. I think they go through some training, they go through some certification, and they take some oath. So they do certain things according to the trustee rules and trustee deeds and things like that. So maybe that's what is lacking here. But also then below the trustees, in Makerere we have what they call the ambassadors. Probably this is what the minister wanted to do with sensitization of the people, because the ambassadors then link with the people who are the savers and to sort of popularize the fund. So I think a board is not a problem, the biggest problem. I think maybe just how they are prepared for it. I don't know what happens with the NSSF board, but at least I can share from Makerere that the trustees are trained.
Good. The question of Eva Tisha from Bunamwaya touches on what you are talking about, the appointment of board members. The lady says, Charles, my concern is on the board members. Apart from the chairman, NSSF board, and Dr. Mugisha of National Water, the rest sounded incompetent. That's why NSSF management team appeared stronger than the board itself. They must step down. And why did NSSF pay its board members NSSF contribution, yet they are not employees of NSSF? Professor Sarah, what should be and the person says Mujoga.
Yeah.
What do you think should be the proper qualification of a board member of an organization like NSSF?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I think, one, I don't want to believe what the person is saying. I think this is another cultural thing we have that I know and everyone else doesn't know. That's another trend we have in Uganda. Every individual knows more than every other individual knows. And sometimes we pronounce that even without knowing the detail of who the board members are. I think for me, seeing the technocrats from the different line ministries that supervise, seeing people like the chairman of the board, I think these people are qualified. But probably it's the challenges that Andrew speaks about. They seem to be very qualified people working in a very problematic context, which unfortunately we are not privy to. It's Honorable Mara who has the report. And maybe that report speaks more. And I hope with time we are going to see more. But you're saying who should be? I imagine the NSSF bill determines who becomes a board member. And I imagine this bill was arrived at after a very long process. And I think also in Uganda, sometimes it's not the lack of the policies and the rules. It seems to be just the environment in which these people find themselves working. So from my perspective, I think the people are qualified and the people are competent, and any gaps that are in the Honorable Mpaka Committee should be addressed. But I think we need to go back and look at the policy. I think the problem we also have is to think that if you were not there when that policy was being made, therefore the policy is wrong. So you always have new arrivals on the scene wanting to reconstitute policies that people actually spent time developing very well. This is a matter which needs scrutiny, but I think the current crop of the board seems to be fairly competent men and women.
I just want to comment also that if you look at one of our best public institutions, which is well run, is National
Security Fund.
Yes, National Waters. Yeah. And Dr. Silva has done really an incredible job. And that gives me, by the way, confidence that even in future, if NSSF invests in an entity like Omeme 100%, if we reform, make those necessary reforms, you will find a Ugandan who will run that place extremely well. So there are people who are competent around, but you see, as a board, you are looked at as one. Even if you're very good and the board is gutted, you go with the what? You go with the board, with the team. Unfortunately.
Someone called Bukama Agaba from Tungamo says, I think Honorable Mpaka's committee did a great job, but I think there should be an open public debate about NSSF. Savers must be allowed to have a say on how their money is used. A handful of old men making decisions about a populace of savers isn't going well at all.
And we'll tell you how will you organize them? Because they are around 4 million, so where are you going to gather them?
Exactly. That's why there's representation.
Yeah.
Members, any viewer who is sending me a message sharing with us their thoughts, kindly keep it short, 2 sentences, at most. I mean, 1 sentence is good enough. You can make your point. Like this one is too long. Honorable Mara, I don't know how if this is what you advise the people of Otuke, because this someone is from Otuke, called, he says, I greet you all and thank you so much for your able discussions. Charles, my name is Lamek Ogwal YK from Otuke district, and I've been following the debate, and I want to state that the future of NSSF is very clear, but there are some toxic members turning the fund into their pocket change. I have formed an opinion such that the fund be overhauled to improve on governance and reduce opportunities for corruption. A stronger, more competent and God-fearing board God-fearing should be put in place to improve on decision-making and oversight. I thank you. Bravo to Honorable Paul O'Mara. Bravo to Professor Sally. Bravo, the old man of the clan. And bravo, my learned brother Charles. Good night. He said,
that's the speaker of the district council. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
That's why he's writing too much.
He's a lawyer like you.
Yeah, so he's saying that there should be an overhaul. But Alex from Kumi says, Charles, thank you for this show. Ugandans lost trust in government to the extent that they don't trust their own shadows. So maybe an audit and investigation should be done after every 2 years with at least 3 different auditing institutions for checks and balances. This guy is called Alex from Kumi. Then another person here says, let politicians keep off the fund. And then Sam says, good evening, Charles. NSSF money is too big. I propose that NSSF employees, right from the board members down to sweepers, need to be taken to Chankwanzi after every 6 months so that they are reminded of their duties. And Andrew, you have someone supporting you here. Someone called Sam. He says, Andrew Mwenda has too much knowledge. He will paralyze the system at NSSF.
So we don't send him there.
So this person is saying Andrew should not come near the board. There is another person here. I am Newton from Nakawa. I don't think the issue of employing only the rich would work. Look at the iron sheets. Most
are they rich?
Most of the people are actually named rich people. That's why what this person is saying. I think let me take 3 more. Let me take 3 more, and then we get back to the, there is need for reform at NSSF. That's what Peter Sunday is saying. And then Mikhaili Wilson says, in Tanzania, the pension sector is liberalized, Honorable Mara. They have pension providers like NSSF, PSF, PSSP, PPF, and savers in Tanzania can even borrow loans from their pension service providers. They can allow you to withdraw your funds as soon as you leave an employer. I know this as truth after working in Tanzania for 6 years, from 2012 to 2016. That's what this gentleman is saying. Thank you so much for that. And then there is...
maybe you should ask him whether the Provident Fund in Tanzania is better than Uganda.
I doubt.
They are just far below there.
Ntale Godfrey from Nansana says, thanks, Charles, for hosting everyone, especially Andrew Mwenda, the judge of the continent. He is realistic. Now, my understanding, I can trust that NSSF is going through normal challenges, and it should be remembered to appreciate. I think something is not right there. Besides improving, NSSF should be involved in national investments and development. I am Ntale Godfrey from Nansana. And then do we still have money for the midterm access? Why do they make it so hard to access? The 10-year savings isn't fair. I think there is midterm access.
There's midterm access which is going on, and the target which NSSF wants to do now is to make sure, now they will spend about a week to pay you in terms of their service delivery. They are looking at doing it within 1 day. So you apply, and the system will make sure your money is credited. I think that's a great ambition. And let me add and say this. There has been a lot of noise around NSSF for bad reasons. The investigation is still continuing, as I've already mentioned. Please, Ugandans, let's allow
the investigation.
Allow investigations to go at IGG and with the forensic audit with the Auditor General. Allow the management to settle down and really rebuild NSSF. This is our own baby. It's just like after you've displayed your baby, you keep on bastardizing it. Let us allow NSSF to settle down. They have been doing a great job. And let the management settle down and really help us to build that fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Charles. This is Bwire David from Isinjiro. Thank you for hosting that wonderful panel. My concern is about considering one person for renewal of contract and rejecting another. Rewarding and punishing while in the same situation, I feel so offended with such an action. Andrew Mwenda, what do you say about this?
Who is...
I think they're talking about Ayota and Biarogaba. The minister said Biarogaba had passed his retirement, his service time. I think and Biarogaba is reportedly younger than Ayota, and yet Ayota's was renewed. That's what this person is saying.
I think it's simpler because I think Richard Biarogaba did not get along well with his supervisor. That's why she did not want to reappoint him.
Yeah.
But she also clarified. She said it's because Richard Ayota's contract, sorry, not Richard, but Mr. Ayota's contract had expired in October. Patrick, yes. And then she gave him some extension, and then Mr. Biarugaba's was expiring in December. And of course, I think she has a level she reports to, and she reported to this level. because she was saying these are people who are persisted. Do we give them 5 years? Do we give them 3 years? Do we give them 1 year? And I think the appointing authority was, let's wait, let's consult, and then these things blew up. So they ended up in the... But I think in her submission, there was no intention to play double standards. Yes.
But just let me also add, I have looked through that report of the select committee. There is no indication anywhere that Patrick Ayota was found doing anything wrong. It is not in that report. But the recommendation that he should step aside to allow for IGG investigation on 1.8 is like a bandwagoning, that you are management, you also be part of this thing. But you don't see it in that report.
Okay. So it was a political decision, not a technical one.
maybe.
They were waiting for
I think what was not clear was the transparency, or truth actually, to say that you, Richard Byarugaba, you have a question that you need to be investigated or that needs to be finalized, instead of, because the first, you remember the first reason that came out, upon the report that the president had directed that Richard Byarugaba be appointed, that the prime minister was given directive to go and talk and direct actually Honorable Amongin to appoint Byarugaba was rejected or played down upon by Amongin, and the issue that time was that he has passed the age for him to be the MD. Yet the person who had been renewed was 1 year older than him. That was the issue.
Although the sequence of events, to be fair, the sequence of events was like this. I think the minister, when she found that these people's age was above retirement,
she consulted.
Yes, and she was informed that if you are to be reappointed, you resign first, then you get reappointed because you are exceeding your age. Yes. So she asked them to resign and then be reappointed. Immediately after, Patrick Ayota submitted his letter of resignation. And once he resigned, the minister reappointed him because he has resigned based on his age.
He had followed the instructions.
Yes, whatever. And I think Richard did not submit his resignation immediately. It took, I think, a couple of weeks. Then, by the time he submitted it, the Deputy Attorney General had written an opinion saying, if you have a contract, since they're not public servants, you can actually stay your entire period. Once your contract finishes, then you can be reappointed.
Because age is not a matter.
What Betty Amongi did is when she had already reappointed the Patrick. When she had already received Richard's letter, she never accepted his resignation or rejected it. Since there was that was overtaken by the opinion of the Deputy Attorney General saying, let him stay there. So she allowed him to stay, and his contract expired and did not reappoint him.
But also the job has never been re-advertised because he's going to be reappointed. He was going to be reappointed. That's what she said.
There was a board recommendation that both the managing director and the deputy managing director be reappointed. The law is not very clear whether the board resolution is binding on the minister. Whether if the board says this is what we want, the minister is bound to follow that. You see, it's not clear. But what she did is, I think Richard is also delayed to resign so that he could be reappointed, could have caused. But the problem, I think that the problem at NSSF is not anything wrong that happened in that organization. It is that there was a disagreement between the minister and the managing director. They just couldn't get along. And if you are Museveni, you have to make a decision is to understand that these people cannot get along. Should you remove the minister so the managing director can do his job? Or should you
let the managing director go
so the minister can do the supervision? Now, let me tell you, any consideration by Museveni
has consequences.
Has to be political. No, has to be political. Because there are many issues that are political in that matter. Museveni does not appoint ministers because they are competent, because they are politically beneficial. They deliver a particular constituency. If you ask me to analyze it, Betty Among is the chairperson of the Lango Parliamentary Group. Am I correct?
No.
No.
She was.
She was. Okay, now she's not.
Mm.
But
she's an influential leader
but she
from
comes
there.
with the constituency.
She comes
she's
from
that
Lango.
region.
She comes
She's
with
the daughter-in-law
numbers.
of Milton Obote. She's married to Milton Obote's son.
Say you are.
she's
say
also a
she's
competent
your
minister.
relative. You just say she's your relative.
She's my.
You are part of that family.
She's my granddaughter-in-law. So she carries a lot of political. She's not in the cabinet like any other person. She's there because there is an alliance between NRM and the UPC. There are so many considerations you'd look at. And also coming from the north, I don't know whether Museveni would tolerate, politically would allow, a managing director of an organization being supervised by a minister to win, to defeat the minister. And it even becomes worse if the minister is coming from the north and this person is coming from the west. They may say, these Westerners are so powerful, even our ministers are of no consequence. There are so many considerations that are not just technical. And also given the fact that Museveni has lost Buganda and may not regain it, his need to keep the north. And that's why you see the speaker, the deputy speaker, the president, the vice president. So many, there has been a realignment towards the north and the northeast, and maybe even western. So there are many considerations Museveni has to make. That is why I was telling you earlier that these decisions are not purely technical. Uganda and the political structure that runs it is not built on technical considerations. The technical aspects of government are an instrument of politics. Politics is not an instrument of technocracy. So the technical infrastructure is put there to support the politics. The final decision in these matters
will be political.
Will always be political because the president is a politician.
Maybe you can say will to a large extent always be political.
Yes, the primary. The primary consideration will be political, the technical aspects will be derivative of the political. You see, the president of Uganda is given power to appoint all these technical people. The minister is the one appointing the board and appointing the managing director and the deputy managing director. At every twist and turn, you see there is political supervision and political power over technocracy. So technocracy can never supersede politics. I tell guys, if you want to succeed in a job, and I have seen many heads of government institutions who have had a keen eye on politics. They have actually managed the institutions well, and they have not had problems. They have ensured that the board has come. It may have a technical mandate as well, but its appointment has political foundations. And therefore, what are the expectations of the appointing authority to do with this board? Then you look at the minister, how do I handle this minister to ensure that let me give you an example. Why do people struggle to be ministers? Please tell me. A minister in Uganda is paid the salary of an MP. If you look at the payments of a minister, there is nothing a minister has officially, except an official car, but MPs also now have cars. 200,000 shillings worth of what do they call it?
Airtime.
Airtime and some fuel allowance. It's very little.
And some little honoraria, which
so
is
I ask myself,
for their
why
office.
do people struggle to be ministers? Because they are likely to find some resources there. The appointing authority is not blind to the fact that for Omara to keep his constituency, he may need to deliver patronage to people there. People come to Omara because they want fees. There is a funeral service. There is a fundraising. There is a church building. There is a sick person in his constituency. All these come on his private income. Can he afford that? That is the reality of Ugandan politics. Now, you can think that this is Norway or Sweden or Singapore and structure your politics as an MP around those lines. You will fail. So you'll need to attend to the expectations of your constituents based on the cultural political realities of Uganda.
Time.
So now, 1 second. If you are therefore a member of parliament or a minister, you must have access to resources to ensure that you finance those expectations in your constituency. It makes sense if you're in a powerful oversight committee of parliament because you may get resources from that job to do your work. It makes sense if you're a minister to find resources. So even institutions under you become a vehicle through which you can get something for your constituency. I don't think that Museveni is blind to that consideration that a minister he has appointed will look at the institutions they supervise for resources to finance their politics. I can promise you, if you removed that, this democracy you're trying to build
will collapse.
But Andrew, even as, sorry Charles.
It's okay.
Even as he emphasizes a lot of politics, I would want to say we also, this is just a caution, we really need to ensure that the technical people that run our institutions are protected. Are protected, because we should not do everything at the expense of the technical knowledge. For example, now we have mentioned silver in water. We have banks now. You know, majority of the MDs who are running banks in Uganda are Ugandans. A good number of them. In the past, there used to be Kenyans who were running our banks. Now, some of us went outside to run other banks outside.
You were also out. So.
Yes, we were being developed. So now we can come and run banks here properly. Now, so it's same thing with NSSF. Now, let us make sure that we protect Ugandans who have dedicated their time to be technical and to help us build these institutions. Because politicians, ours is more supervisory, and then policy and whatever. But the technical people are the ones who run those institutions. So let's not lose sight, because a moment we start now caning these people, they will run out of this country. Now we have oil and gas.
By the way, Omar, I should tell you.
Oil and gas. Now, Ugandans who have been trained outside are the ones going to run that over a period of time.
In 2013,
the same thing with Omeme. We need to have Ugandans who should
run Omeme. In 2013,
yes,
Richard Yargaba's contract at NSSF expired. The minister who was there, Maria Chwanuka, refused to reappoint him and said, let us advertise. They advertised, and the interviews were sat by 3 people. The person who came first with 82%,
was that
83% was Edgar Gaba. 82%
was the first.
The second had 75%. I think it was Kitamirike, who was at that time managing director of National Construction, National Housing and Construction Corporation. Richard, who was the incumbent,
was the third person.
Came third, I think, with 62%. I have a suspicion that and these interviews were done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. You see, Maria Chwanuka created this and said, okay, let us hire an international audit firm to do these interviews for us. I have suspicions of my own. I felt at that time that there was the process, even at PricewaterhouseCoopers, was rigged to eliminate Richard. First of all, President Museveni intervened to say, look, here is Richard's performance. The guy, this is a contract you gave him. He has met and exceeded most, if not all, of his targets.
KPIs.
So the president's reasoning was, why should you
even advertise,
refuse to renew a contract of somebody who has exceeded his performance targets in his contract?
In the middle
How do you encourage other technically competent people to come and do this work if the reward is being fired rather than being renewed? So the president personally intervened with Maria Chwanuka and said, you reappoint Richard.
But then,
but I'm coming to this.
Yes.
So as you guys argue, that was a political intervention.
Yes.
To protect.
But that was not political intervention, Andrew.
It was a political intervention to protect technocracy. To say this person was technically competent. But there is a contradiction
but
also.
Maria Chwanuka was taking a political decision.
No. Maria Chwanuka actually had also taken a technical decision to say, let us hire an international audit firm. To assess. Job. So it was a technical decision.
It was.
But the president's intervention was also, although it is political, because he was acting purely based on his political authority, to say, no, the guy has performed well. So I want to see that this was the first time that Richard faced a problem with his immediate supervisor. You get it? Now, when Maria Chwanuka left, and largely because she was not working well with Richard, and she was not a politician, she was also being appointed Minister of Finance technocratically. He didn't have a political constituency where she had run. Well, she had a political constituency in the sense that she's well connected to Nabageraka and Mengo and all this, but she didn't have an actual constituency like Omara has. And she was not rooted into politics. So she left and Richard stayed there. When Kasaija came as minister, Kasaija is really a hands-off guy. In the sense that the Minister of Finance never tried to follow up what was happening in SF. The Minister of Finance has so many responsibilities, so many institutions under it, and a lot of money, all the money of the country is there. No one is, people at finance are not going to look at ministry, at NSSF for much really. So each time NSSF drew up its budget, it was easily approved. Now, when Betty Amongi came, the first time, the ex-committee, that's the executive committee of NSSF, they drew up a budget, they took it to the board approved it, they took it to the minister. Betty Amongi sat down and went item by item. No one had ever done that at the Ministry of Finance. And started raising queries. Why is this like this? Why is this like this? Why is this like that? It has never happened. And NSSF people were unable to explain the budget to her properly. So she gave them 3 weeks. You go and answer for me these very important questions.
Yes.
That's oversight she was already beginning to exercise. It is when they came with these answers that now she raised these issues, said, okay, I as minister, I would like 4 things to be done in NSSF. One, I would like to see NSSF
expand
savings, trying to reach out to go to industrial parks and other places and expand the net of people who are supposed to subscribe to the fund. 2, I would like to see NSSF tap into, under the new law, those Ugandans who are working in the Middle East, especially. You know, 25% of all passengers out of Entebbe airport are people going to work in the Middle East. How can we get them to save with NSSF? 3, I would like NSF to build a platform for whistleblowers to, you know, if there is a problem in NSF, it can be seen. I can't remember what the 4th was. She raised the 4 issues and said they should be funded. Now, all the information I have is that I have actually read the minutes of the board, minutes of the EXCO, and all this. I don't find it in those documents. There could have been conversations outside of those documents. I don't find in those documents Betty Amongi saying, you get 6 billion and bring it to me. Or even it's transferred to the Ministry of Gender. It's not there.
No one has said that she did that.
That's what, if you follow the parliament, I called an opinion poll at my office. I said, you journalists, A, B, C, D, F, G, 8 people. What was about 6 billion? Said, the minister wanted 6 billion for herself, or she wanted it to be transferred from NSSF to Ministry of Gender.
I thought what the complaint was of some of the members, like I remember it was Wilson Owere. I thought what they were saying is that one of the anomalies was that a minister who is supported ordinarily from the consolidated fund was asking for money from the workers' fund to support or to fund activities of the minister about, you know, to grow like the savings base and all that. And that was an anomaly. I thought that is what even the minister was saying, that we already fund, you know.
Let me clarify. You see, there is a problem. Maybe there was a discussion, verbal, between the MD and other people and the minister, where the minister said, transfer this money to Ministry of Gender.
But there's no evidence.
But in terms of the documentation, there was even a meeting on the 24th of November last year. 2022. Where they said, okay, the minister has said these activities. First of all, the managing director, the deputy managing director, the chief financial officer, the chief whatever, everybody at NSF, the EXCO.
They attended.
Plus the board agreed with the president, with the minister's recommendations. There are people at the NSF who say, some of these activities NSF was already doing them. But there is no record in those meetings that the minister was notified that these things you are saying we are already doing them. On the contrary, both the board and the EXCO of NSSF agreed to these activities. But if you read the documentation, the impression I get is that NSF was planning to implement these activities itself.
True.
They were not transferring any money from the NSSF to
the minister.
To the Ministry of Gender or to the minister personally. They are going to spend this money as NSF. 2, all the 4 activities are actually important for NSF to improve compliance
and, in their plan.
And to expand its catchment area. At least from the documents, again I want to emphasize, from the documentation that
I
you
saw
see,
some of them.
the different ministers and all this, I don't find any wrongdoing by the minister. I'm a supervisor. I am telling you, improve compliance, increase your catchment area, create a whistleblower platform. Why shouldn't NSF do that? If you say you're already doing it, then show me, tell me. There is nowhere in the record that they thought, what you're asking us, we're already doing it, don't add on money. So if there is anything, it's possible there were backdoor negotiations between them and the minister saying this money will come into your bag. But it's not in the official record.
But also, Andrew, if the usual allocation she has from the consolidated fund didn't have those activities because they were new, it is just normal that where they're going to be implemented, they could also be paid for. So you can't say she was already supported from the consolidated fund. Why was she asking? We
I
work in
don't
government
know whether
entities.
it is
If you
legal.
have an additional activity which was not catered for in the budget, you have to explore
But
ways
Sarah,
of meeting
I
it.
don't know whether the law of Uganda allows an institution like NSSF to fund a government ministry. The government ministry is
No,
supposed
the law
to get
doesn't
No,
allow
they
it.
would do it within NSSF,
No.
as you say.
Yes, they were supposed to do it as NSSF.
Yes.
So even if the minister wanted this money to go to the Ministry of Gender because they have labor officers there whom she said they can use, how the NSSF would use them, I do not know, but I don't know how money would be moved from NSSF to the ministry. Because ministries receive money from the consolidated fund. Let me tell you technically even.
Yeah.
Technically, if you're spending money as a ministry, your accounting office is given a password.
Yes.
Because government has one treasury account in the central bank. You are allocated 100 billion for this quarter.
And there's
So each time you want to pay, you go into the IFMS, the
IFMS,
Integrated
yes.
Financial
Yes.
Management System.
Yes.
You put in a password, and that money is released to the person supposed to receive it. It would require NSF actually to take money to the Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance puts it in the Central Treasury account
And
for
before
them
it-
to spend it.
yes, so it's
The rules
difficult.
of government of Uganda even refuse you to have petty cash. I think a ministry is entitled to 40 million shillings as petty cash per month. They removed all these cash payments because of the experience from Kazinda. Those days,
OPM.
they were removing the cash, 10 billion, taking it apparently to Northern Uganda Reconstruction Program, then it would be stolen along the way. So these days, you cannot get government money in this, the way technical is.
Andrew, someone called Mr. Owere Wilson is just sharing with me information here. He has just sent a message. He says, I don't agree with Mwenda. The problem was because Richard refused to approve the 6 billion and he signs Owere Asha Wilson. And he says, that is why the minister was witch hunting Richard.
But that's not
How
true.
can president keep some
I thought
workers?
you read the minutes.
Now, he has sent me a document.
Listen, Odongotho,
Yeah.
that is false. The board of NSSF and the EXCO of NSSF,
The management.
management and board approved the 6 billion. It was approved. In fact, in that meeting of 24th November, the issue was, can you fine-tune these activities and how NSSF is going to implement them? That was the recommendation. So whoever thinks that that proposal was rejected, Richard doesn't work alone. He works with the board and works with an executive committee. The EXCO or management of top management of NSSF and the board approved those expenditures.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
And by the way, NSSF Act, I think Section 29, subsection 3, mandates the minister to approve the budget or disapprove it or amend it as deemed necessary, and so the law, by the way, that is the law. So if the minister acted and said, okay, I've received your budget, but consider this, is within the law, unless we take away the law.
Okay. Professor Sarah, in this NSSF, there is a silent mistrust between Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Gender, of course, which is from the background being that the one of course supervising the policy and and all that. The other is looking at the financial aspect of the fund, and each one would want to wrestle the other out or be the alpha male, so to speak. Do you think that they can be reconciled to ensure that there is proper, operation, proper work that is not interfered with at the fund?
Yeah, thank you very
For the
much.
better health.
Actually, that's
Finance
what I was
and
coming
gender.
to, because they are not in conflict, actually.
They're not supposed to be.
Each time each of them has spoken, they said they've been consulting each other, that one was managing investments and another one was managing policy. But Charles, I think we are getting to this level because as a country we have reduced social security to NSSF. okay, to this money that people pay that is in trillions. So everybody around NSSF is focusing on how to manage this money, how to invest this money. But I also want to say that Social Security is not just that provident fund. So if Minister of Finance wants, first of all, there will always be a problem when you have dual reporting. There are challenges with that. But also, if Minister of Finance wants to manage the provident fund, I would be also for the view, I know Andrew will say there are so many people and they are scattered and they are not organized. But I look forward to a time in this country when we shall expand our understanding of Social Security. I come from a discipline which is always focusing on marginalized groups. Ministry of Gender focuses on that. Social Security is about preparing people to overcome and transcend risks and vulnerabilities. So it is the ministry in charge of those risks and vulnerabilities. The people who are in NSSF, it's true some of them are poor, they are small earners, but there is a lot of people who are not there. So a few years ago, the ministry onboarded an intervention of SAGE for elderly people. So when you look at NSSF and you look at SAGE, it looks like the only risk the country understands is old age. But there are many risks, of course, we saw challenges coming up with that view contested during COVID, where people say, look here, we are suffering, hence the midterm access. But if you look in this country, where 64% are agriculturalists and only around 13 or 20% are gainfully employed. So there are people there who are experiencing risks, shocks and vulnerabilities every day, and they are not dying because they are alive. So the country also has to pay attention to those people, not to just get votes from them. You have people who are being thrown off the land on a daily, and they don't know where to go. You have those who are sick. You have those whose crops are failing. So I look forward, and if I had a way, I think for me, the Ministry of Gender should focus more on how do you explore ways of work. You may not call it NSSF because that's a provident fund, but how do you explore, like you came up with SAGE for old people because you think old people matter as human beings. So what else can you come up with for people who are not the ones who you can track and withdraw the 15%. So I think if we expanded our understanding of Social Security beyond this Provident Fund NSSF, then we would actually, the two mandates would be very clear. One would explore those, the Ministry of Gender is also called the Ministry of Okulera, because it's the one which babysits all those people with vulnerabilities and minorities and marginalized. Then the other one would focus on the fund, because we've been hearing that the fund needs to be managed by people who understand how big that amount of money is going and what it will, those things Honorable Mara is talking about. So I think, one, in response to your question, there's no conflict because the two ministers have been consulting each other. And they are getting on very well. But I also think if we are to look further in this country with the kind of our population dynamics, we would expand our understanding of Social Security beyond just these remittances we make at the end of the month, because that would only cater for 4 million. Uganda, we are heading to 50 million. How do we cater for the other people? And that should be the mandate of Ministry of Gender.
There is a very interesting discussion going on, exchange, between someone called Matua Job Richard and Owere Wilson, and the grass where the exchange is going on is my phone. Matua Job says, Charles, don't accept falsehoods of Mr. Owere Wilson. That there is no evidence anywhere that Honorable Minister Betty Amongi Ongom wanted 6 billion shillings. Andrew Mwenda is right. Then Owere says, please, that Honorable Betty Amongin wrote letters herself, and he sends me 2 different letters, 9 pages. Now I can't read, 1 minute left to the show, to the end of the show. Now I can't read. But he says the crisis at NSSF was created by the Honorable Minister who wanted to create chains, and that workers' leaders, including some former and current members, who are supposed to make it easier for some maneuvers and all that. That's the claim that Wilson is making. And then someone is saying, Charles, good evening. I've been following tonight's discussion of NSSF. Does it surprise you that NSSF's stellar performance in the last 10 years coincides with the establishment of a sector regulator, UBRA. Thank you, Lydia, for that. I think someone says here, I think Professor Sarah is right that there is a way we can diversify beyond NSSF. I need to get Sarah's number. Someone is saying this. And then, now, this one I have to read as it is. Thanks, Honorable Chris Baromusi, watching, and he says, the Minister of Gender was right to scrutinize the NSSF budget. The law allows her. The Minister guided that NSSF uses 6 billion to expand the NSSF contributions and savings. And the Minister did not ask for the money to go to the ministry. Parliament was just biased against the Minister. Article 39.3 of the NSSF Act. That's what I quoted. I think that is the one I quoted. That is a section, Honorable. Article is only for the Constitution, but Article 39 of the NSSF Act states the Minister shall, upon receipt of the annual budget or supplementary budget, approve or disapprove the budget, or may approve it subject to such an amendment as he or she may deem it fit. The Minister did no wrong. This is brilliant. Thank you very much, Honorable Baromusi, for bringing us to this. I like the discussions. I like it. I really would have wanted that it should continue. On the professor, someone who is admiring your presentation called Dr. Kisha Dennis, he says, I need to get in touch with Professor Sally. I like her presentation. Yeah, I think, but unfortunately we have to come to a close. So we are going to do 1 minute each. Way forward, this NSSF, we have had the discussions before, from when the story broke to the entire we had an elaborate discussion here on when it was at its highest, you know, it hit its peak. And now, for me, I think that it's important that we had to discuss the way forward, whether it is for the pension sector, whether it is for the social security sector, and whether it is for NSSF itself, that we look at what is the way forward. Is workers' money safe? And we have been assured that workers' money is safe, even when Patrick Ayota himself came here. So, Professor, let's start 1 minute each to end.
Thank you very much. Like I've said, well, there is no cause for alarm. I think the laws were applied, and if we are not happy with the laws, we should change them. But as I've said before, we need to diversify our understanding of NSSF. We need to plan for Ugandans beyond those 4 million who are salaried and are paying into NSSF. Let us come up with other schemes for other people to shelter them when they go through crises, when they go through risks, when they go through shocks. They are Ugandans. I don't know what they will be called. It will not be a provident fund, but we need to plan for Ugandans all over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable
Thanks, Charles, and the viewers. I think the allegations that were made by the Minister of Labour, a good number of them were confirmed by the Select Committee. And also Parliament, in its wisdom, did not allow for the dual control to go away. So what is important now is for the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Labour, they need to learn to work together, because this is a big fund that they are co-hosting. So they should find a way of working together as a way forward. There should not be undercutting each other.
By the way, can you MP start looking into some of those, you know, small petty squabbles? And, you know, because it makes the country look terrible. It's not just that. No, I'm actually told even this the saga going on, Iron Sheet, is started as a result of those things.
Yeah, so they need to
It becomes very expensive for government to change its image when it goes really down because of some petty squabbles and...
Yes, I think that is one. Number two is that the IGG and the Auditor General is carrying out further investigations. Something might come out or might not come out. Let's wait for it. 3, let us allow the management of NSSF now to stabilize the fund, to deal with the corporate and governance and administrative issues, lapses that were raised, so that this is our baby, so that we can continue to move forward. I think most importantly, in the future, maybe a not long distant future, we need to come up with laws, amendments of the NSSF Act to allow NSF to play a strategic role in investing in the key areas of our economy.
Yeah.
I think that would be very, very helpful.
I pray that that comes very fast.
Yeah.
It should come fast. Finally, Andrew Mwenda, old man of the clan.
My own view is, regardless of what laws and policies say, anyone who becomes a managing director at NSSF must be always cognizant to know that you need a lot of skill to manage your political supervisors. If you don't have that skill, we will end up where we are today.
Good. Thank you very much, the trio. Thank you, Andrew Mwenda. Thank you very much, the Honorable Paul Omara, and thank you so much, Professor.
By the way, Charles, I'm just from Dar es Salaam, so I've been traveling, stayed 4 hours at Kia.
We can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
and talking of traversing the region, for me, I've been, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've not been here. I've been all over Uganda. I started from Gululira, all over Mbale, Soroti. Then, now, I want to, actually, greetings to you from your people of Fort Portal. They sent you greetings. They said, that old young man. and for them, I said, I will say hello to the guys of Fort Portal and the guys of Mbarara and Hoima. They said, please, we watch your program a lot. We like it. It is the best. Send us, just wave to us. So I'm doing that. There you are. Hi. Good night.
Good night.
This is Chilling. Don't miss a brand new season of Chilling on UBC TV.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is the future of Uganda. And as a policy maker, the policies I enact today will protect her from child marriage and teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and teenage pregnancy. Because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're descending into Entebbe Airport. For those proceeding to Kampala City, the biggest event in East Africa is in town.
That's right, the East African Business Expo 2023 is happening from the 23rd to the 26th of March at Kololo Grounds. Join us to network, connect, and grow. Contact us for exhibition or sponsorship opportunities. The 14th East African Procurement Forum and Business Expo 2023 is hosted by PPBA.
Now sit back and relax. It's time to explore great business opportunities.
The eastern part of Lahore now resembles a battleground as the violence has spilled over into a second day. The unrest flared up on Tuesday as Khan's supporters gathered outside his home to defend him from the authorities. Some locals say the attempt to arrest Khan is aimed at postponing the elections, which could see him return to power.